Imagine for a second that you are holding two photographs, just, right in your hands,
Okay.
and you are looking closely at them, studying the details,
Hmm.
and you realize they are pictures of the exact same physical location.
Oh, wow. Like the exact same spot.
Exactly the same spot,
Mm.
the same stretch of dirt, the same coordinates on the map,
Mhm.
the exact same trees framing the edges of the shot.
Right.
But in the first photograph, the landscape is locked in this desolate, silent, just bitter winter.
Oh, yeah.
The branches are completely bare, the sky is flat and gray, the soil is cracked. I mean, the earth looks completely, utterly dead.
Yeah, just frozen solid, nothing moving.
Right. But then you look at the second photograph, same spot,
Hmm.
but it is a vibrant, thriving early summer.
Completely different vibe.
Exactly. Everything is buzzing with intense green. The canopy is thick. It is alive. It is loud with vitality.
That is such a striking visual to start with.
It really is. And it brings up a question for you, the listener. What if your mind operates exactly the same way?
I love that. It immediately forces you to recognize a fundamental truth about nature, The land itself didn't change its underlying composition. The dirt didn't suddenly become a different chemical compound.
Right. It's still the exact same dirt.
Exactly. Only the climate changed. The potential for life was always sitting right there in the soil, just waiting for the environment to allow it to emerge.
And that visual of the changing seasons is really the foundation of our deep dive today.
It is a great starting point.
We are looking at a short, but honestly incredibly profound essay written in May 2020.
Yeah, by an author named Sufeng.
Yes. The piece is titled Thinking About the Temperature of the Soul from Two Pictures. It was translated by Kinyu and edited by Musa.
Right.
And our mission today is to explore this central, fascinating metaphor. This idea that we can literally measure our mental vitality and our creativity just by checking the temperature of our internal landscape.
It is a really unique way to look at the mind.
It is. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the text actually begins by establishing the baseline facts of those two photographs you just described.
The author actually took those, right?
Yeah, Sufeng took these two photos of the place where they live and work. So it is a literal physical observation serving as the anchor for the entire philosophy.
Which makes it feel so much more grounded.
It does. In the winter photograph, the low temperature dictates absolutely everything. Because it is freezing, the earth is completely silent and bleak.
But when that physical climate shifts, the warmth returns to that exact same patch of earth.
Right, and it suddenly presents a scene of massive vitality, so the cold suppresses while the warmth releases.
Which brings us to the leap the author makes, moving from the literal weather outside our window to the weather inside our heads.
Yes, the internal climate.
And I find this shift so incredibly compelling because of how we typically handle feeling uninspired. I mean, think about it.
Sure.
When you feel stuck or burnt out or your brain feels like it is trudging through mud, you usually blame your circumstances.
Oh, 100%. You blame your job or your daily routine.
Exactly. You blame your apartment, the city you live in. You blame your location in life.
Yeah, we all do that.
The natural instinct is to think, well, if I could just move to a new city or buy a new desk setup or get a new job, I would be creative again.
Like you would magically be a different person.
Right. Like the location is the problem.
What's fascinating here is how the author completely bypasses all those external structural fixes. The text introduces this concept of the spiritual sky.
The spiritual sky. I just love that phrase.
It is beautiful, and the author equates a low-temperature soul directly to that natural winter landscape. Shuifeng explicitly describes it as a state where everything internally is bleak and silent.
So it shifts the whole perspective.
Exactly. It's just the perspective of mental health, inspiration, and drive from being a problem with your physical location to being an environmental problem within your own mind. The author argues that when the temperature of a person's spiritual sky is appropriate, when it is warm, their soul is naturally full of vitality and creativity.
And when it drops?
When it drops, the soul is, in the text's words, dead.
It is like if a pond is frozen solid, you don't look at the ice and say the water is breaking.
No, the water isn't broken at all.
It is just cold.
Right.
The environment needs to change for the water to flow again. I mean, you could be sitting in the most beautiful, expensive art studio in the world, but if your spiritual sky is in the dead of winter, nothing is going to grow.
That analogy of the water being cold, not broken, perfectly captures the mechanics of Shuifeng's argument. The creative potential is always there.
Just like the seeds under the winter soil.
Exactly. but the ambient temperature prevents any movement.
I want to dig into how we actually measure that, though,
Okay. Yeah.
because if I am trying to figure out the temperature of my soul right now, if I am trying to look at my own internal thermometer, I need to know what I'm looking for in practical terms.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because, a physical thermometer measures the kinetic energy of molecules. What does this spiritual thermometer measure?
Well, the author provides a very specific three-part definition for this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The temperature of the soul is a spiritual state that measures the strength of a person's mental state, their thinking ability, and their creative ability.
Okay, so it is those three things: mental state, thinking ability, and creative ability.
Right. When someone has a high soul temperature, the text says they are flexible. They are full of enthusiasm, passion, and vitality.
Sort of like the summer earth.
Exactly like that. They are highly creative, effortlessly generating new ideas, just like the summer earth effortlessly generates new growth.
And the flip side.
Conversely, someone with a low soul temperature is described as sluggish. They suffer from rigid thinking, and they entirely lack that creative ability.
Wait, let me push back on this for a second.
Go ahead.
Because my mind immediately goes to the tortured artist trope. Yeah, when the author says someone has a low temperature and they are sluggish, is that just a really poetic way of saying someone is sad?
It is a fair question to ask.
Because we've all seen incredible art, beautiful music, and just amazing creativity come from people who are experiencing deep sadness or grief. I mean, think of Van Gogh or Sylvia Plath.
Right. The cultural narrative is that suffering creates the art.
Exactly. So if a low temperature just means feeling down, how does that square with the fact that sadness can sometimes fuel brilliant work?
Well, the source text requires us to make a very crucial distinction here. A low soul temperature is not just a synonym for sadness or grief.
Okay, what is it then?
It is fundamentally about rigidity.
Rigidity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the exact phrasing the author uses. The winter mind is characterized by rigid thinking. It is a state of being completely frozen and unable to adapt.
Oh, I see.
Sadness is an emotion, and emotions, by their nature, flow. You can be deeply sad and still be highly flexible in your thinking.
You can still be passionate about expressing that sadness.
Exactly. You can still synthesize new information to create a beautiful piece of music. The essay implies that if those artists were truly in a deep, frozen winter state, they wouldn't have produced anything at all.
Ah, I get it now. It is the difference between water that is moving, even if it is a dark, turbulent, sad river, and water that is just a solid block of ice.
Precisely. When your soul is at a low temperature, you are frozen. Ice doesn't flow.
Right.
You cannot adapt to new ideas, you cannot connect disparate concepts, and you cannot synthesize anything new.
Your mental state is just locked in place.
Right. The summer mind, on the other hand, is defined by its flexibility. It is warm enough to bend, to combine ideas, to grow in unexpected directions.
That makes total sense. But that leaves me with a very modern problem.
What is that?
Well, if I identify that I am in this state of rigid winter, I am sluggish, my thinking is inflexible, I am just a block of ice at my desk. My instinct in today's world is to force friction to warm up.
Ah, the grind culture approach.
Exactly. I think, okay, I need to drink 3 coffees, download a new time-blocking app, and just power through. I try to generate heat through sheer mechanical force.
Yeah, a lot of people do that.
But I'm guessing this essay doesn't recommend productivity apps as the heat source.
It certainly does not. The text is very explicit about what the actual fuel for this internal temperature is, and it has nothing to do with modern productivity metrics or forced friction.
So what is the fuel?
The author reveals that the temperature of the soul is composed of and determined by 3 core raw human drivers: affection, love, and sex.
Wow, okay. That is direct.
Yes. The text basically frames these as one's fundamental, unsuppressed nature. A high temperature means a person has rich affection, a heart full of love, and a nature that is allowed to express itself freely rather than being stifled.
Here is where it gets really interesting to me.
Yeah.
The language being used is just so visceral. It is deeply, fundamentally human. I mean, if you read modern self-help books or articles on how to boost your mental state, they usually give you these vague, sanitized corporate concepts.
Right, like optimize your routine or synergize your day.
Exactly. They tell you to practice mindfulness or, streamline your workflow. But Swim doesn't list any of that.
No, not at all.
The fuel for a thriving mind isn't a life hack. It is affection. It is love. It is allowing your physical and emotional nature to exist without shame or suppression.
The author completely bypasses all the modern jargon to focus on what actually creates human vitality. And you
Yes.
can see the underlying mechanism even more clearly when you look at the negative side of the equation.
The things that cause the winter.
Right. If affection and unsuppressed nature are the fuels that create warmth, the author points to specific things that actively drop the temperature.
What are they?
The text states that a low temperature is caused by being desperately discouraged, self-abandoned, lacking gratitude, being full of resentment, and having one's nature suppressed and unreleased.
Lacking gratitude and being full of resentment. Those are powerful concepts.
They really are.
How exactly do those function as freezing agents in this framework?
Well, think about how resentment actually operates in the human mind. Resentment forces your focus entirely backward onto past wrongs or perceived injustices.
Oh, that makes sense.
It demands that you continuously relive a static moment in time. Psychologically, it makes you rigid because you cannot adapt to the present moment.
You are literally frozen in a past grievance.
Exactly.
Ugh.
And lacking gratitude.
Yeah.
It does the exact same thing. It blinds you to the flowing, changing, positive realities around you, locking your perspective into a rigid state of dissatisfaction.
It is like leaving the doors and windows of your house wide open in a blizzard.
That is a great way to put it.
I mean, resentment isn't just an absence of warmth. It is an active invitation for the freezing air to pour into your living room until the pipes burst.
Yes, exactly.
And suppressing your fundamental nature, acting like someone you aren't day after day. What does that actually look like?
It means not living a genuine life. When you are constantly putting on a mask for your boss or your family or society, you are suppressing your natural state.
And that takes energy.
A massive amount of energy. It is like constantly holding a beach ball underwater. Eventually you get exhausted, and that exhaustion is what extinguishes whatever small fire you have left.
Wow.
And the text describes a chain reaction that occurs when that fire goes out. When human nature is chronically suppressed, people are forced to hide who they are.
Which, like you said, is exhausting.
It is. The author writes that this causes a person to become effectively discouraged and self-abandoned. That suppression literally drops the internal temperature until the soul is completely frozen over.
And I imagine the essay doesn't treat that lightly.
Not at all. The text warns of very stark consequences for allowing this to happen.
Which is a really important pivot, because this essay isn't just an abstract philosophical exercise. The author outlines some pretty dire stakes for staying in this frozen state.
The stakes are absolute. The author states that if the temperature of our souls remains too low, our lives will fall into poverty and hopelessness.
Poverty and hopelessness.
Yes. The essay describes an icy existence completely devoid of energy and vitality. It is a state of total stagnation where no new growth, no new joy, and no new creation can possibly occur.
That is a heavy, sobering phrase. It paints a picture of a life that has just ground to an agonizing halt.
It really does.
But it also leads to the ultimate actionable solution of this entire piece. The author says we must consciously raise our temperature to make life colorful and full of energy.
Like that thriving summer sky in the second photograph.
Exactly. The problem is if you are deep in that winter of resentment or your thinking is completely rigid, it is very difficult to just magically conjure up feelings of deep love and affection to warm yourself up.
It is. And the author acknowledges that limitation, which is the major turning point of the essay.
Right.
The text states that relying solely on the temperature of our own inner soul is not enough. We fundamentally need what the author calls the temperature of the outside soul.
The temperature of the outside soul. So we are talking about ambient heat.
Precisely. The text says we must consciously participate and devote ourselves to crowds of people who are full of enthusiasm, passion, love, happiness, joy, freedom, and blessedness.
We cannot saw ourselves in isolation.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you?
Yeah.
If you are listening to this and realizing your spiritual sky has been stuck in February for a long time, the takeaway is that you are not a closed system.
No, you aren't.
When you cannot generate your own heat through your own affection, you have to borrow it. You have to go stand next to a fire.
It is incredibly profound advice because it runs counter to our self-preservation instincts.
How?
Well, when we are stuck in a mental winter, when we are feeling deeply discouraged, self-abandoned, or resentful, the instinct is to withdraw.
Oh, definitely. We pull away from the world.
Right. We stay inside, we isolate, we put up walls. But the author is suggesting that isolation is the absolute worst enemy of a frozen soul. You cannot thaw ice by putting it in a freezer.
When I hear devote yourself to crowds, though, my introvert alarm bells immediately start ringing.
Oh, I'm sure. It can sound intimidating.
Does the author mean that if my mind is rigid, my only solution is to force myself to go to a massive concert or a crowded networking event to thaw out?
Right, that sounds terrible for a lot of people.
Because that sounds exhausting, not warming.
It is a valid concern. But if we look closely at the text, the author isn't talking about the literal head count of a room.
Okay, so it isn't about numbers.
No, it is about the qualities of the people in that space. The author specifically lists enthusiasm, love, happiness, joy, and freedom.
So a crowd could be small.
Exactly. A crowd in this context could be a small community garden group, a passionate book club, or just three friends who genuinely love their hobbies.
It is about proximity to unsuppressed vitality.
Yes. The text promises that this external warmth from others is what allows our own lives to, quote, bloom brilliant shines.
It is the law of thermodynamics applied to human psychology.
Very much so.
If you place a cold object next to a hot object, the heat naturally transfers until they reach equilibrium. You just have to consciously place yourself in the room with the heat source.
And it completely reframes how we think about community.
It really does. It is not just about networking or having a busy social calendar. It is a thermodynamic necessity for keeping your mind flexible and alive.
And it brings the entire metaphor full circle. Just as the physical patch of Earth needed the external warmth of the sun and the shifting seasons to break its silent, bleak state.
Our internal landscape requires the external warmth of joyful communities to break our rigid thinking.
Exactly.
So if we zoom out and trace our steps through this whole journey today, we started with two simple photographs of the exact same plot of land.
Right. One dead and frozen, one vibrant and alive.
And from that simple visual observation, we have unpacked this profound realization that our creativity, our flexibility, and our overall vitality rely entirely on the temperature of our souls.
We learned that this temperature isn't controlled by our physical circumstances or our job titles.
No, it is entirely internal.
It is a measure of our mental flexibility, fueled from within by rich affection, love, and our unsuppressed nature.
And perhaps most importantly, we learned that when our internal fires burn out, we must rely on the ambient warmth of the joyful crowds we consciously choose to surround ourselves with.
We have to actively seek out the summer.
We really do.
But, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this raises an important question.
It does, because this entire essay relies heavily on the physics of heat transfer. The author tells us that when we are trapped in a bitter, icy winter, our survival depends on seeking out joyful, warm crowds to thaw our frozen souls.
Right, we have to go borrow their heat.
But think about how heat actually works in the physical world. When you drop a block of ice into a warm bath, the ice melts, yes, but the water also gets colder.
The heat is exchanged.
Exactly. So what happens to the temperature of that joyful crowd when you step into it?
Oh.
Do you simply absorb their beautiful summer warmth? Or is there a risk that by bringing your ice into their space, you lower the temperature of the whole room?
That is a really tough question to sit with.
It is a powerful reminder that while we have a desperate need for community to keep us alive, we also carry a deep, ongoing responsibility to the temperature of the room we walk into.